of Finance, does he agree with Reserve Bank Governor Alan Bollard's assessment that the economic recovery is proving to be, quote, slow and fragile?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, compared with previous recoveries, generally yes. As Dr Bollard noted in the bank's annual report, a different kind of recovery is to be expected when an economic recession, which began in early 2008, was followed by a global financial crisis. Despite this, he says also in the report, we have now emerged from a long recession and have experienced some quarters of significant growth.
The Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr Speaker, does this therefore prove that the Prime Minister's prediction of a, quote, aggressive, close quote, recovery, when he said, quote, the recovery has been quite considerable, close quote, was in fact incorrect?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, as the Prime Minister has said in response to probably half a dozen questions here in the House, the quote was from March 2009 and reflects the fact that there had been a 2.5% contraction in the economy in the previous year, and subsequent to that the economy grew by 1.9%, which was a welcome increase in economic growth.
Amy Adams.
Minister, what other factors are influencing the nature of the recovery?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, as Dr Bollard and others have pointed out, a major factor in the pace of the recovery is that New Zealanders have adjusted their spending and saving habits very quickly and are now saving rather than spending. This is contributing to a much-needed rebalancing of the economy. However, in the short term, it does mean a slightly more subdued recovery. The government's 1 October tax changes support this much-needed rebalancing by tilting incentives towards earning and saving and away from the housing speculation, rampant borrowing and spending of the last decade.
The Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr Speaker, to the Minister, was he therefore correct when he said that John Key's prediction of an aggressive recovery was merely, quote, aspirational, close quote, and that, quote, I wouldn't want to say he's wrong, but he's setting a high hurdle here, and it's our job as government to meet those expectations. A big focus for the government is replacing the jobs that have been lost. And if not, does he agree that unemployment numbers showing job losses increased by over 500 each week since he has been in office point to a failure to meet those expectations?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, I do agree with the expectations, and with respect to job losses, as was pointed out in the House last week, unemployment currently, the number of people on the unemployment benefit currently is still less than it was for over half of the time that Labor was in office. And I think, as the member knows, when there is a significant recession, unemployment goes up. I'm pleased to say the government is playing its part by spending billions on infrastructure, which is underpinning the employment of thousands of skilled and unskilled people.
The Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr Speaker, which aspect of the recovery has been aggressive? Unemployment staying above 6% compared to the 3.4% achieved under Labor. Recent GDP growth of 0.2%, less than a quarter what the Reserve Bank was predicting. Declining business confidence or housing prices that have continued to fall.
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, as I pointed out in answer to an earlier question, the economy did turn round aggressively from a sharp recession into economic growth. And I think we all understand, and now the recovery is somewhat qualified by the fact that, as I pointed out a number of times, New Zealanders are saving much more strongly than perhaps some had anticipated. And if you save the dollar, you can't spend it, and that's why things are a bit tough for retailers and the construction industry. But in the long run, it is the right kind of adjustment: more saving, less borrowing, the opposite of that member's policies.
The Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr Speaker, does he agree with Governor Bollard's concern expressed to the Finance Committee last week about the decline of business lending by the New Zealand banking system and the thus dramatic decline in New Zealand manufacturing activity? And if so, does he have a plan for dealing with either of those matters?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, I do agree with the concern about the decline in business lending, and that of course is a product of a couple of things. One is the fact that New Zealanders are saving more and spending less, and so businesses who are in areas such as retail and construction won't have the demand for borrowing simply because they don't see the opportunities for growth. In the long run, the government has a wide-ranging economic program designed to lift productivity and confidence, and we are confident that in time business investment will begin to flow. But we're going to do everything we possibly can to encourage businesses to invest and employ.
Order. Amy Adams.
To the Minister, what steps has the government taken to pull the economy out of the recession that started in early 2008 and put it on the road to recovery?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, in the short term the government has run substantial deficits in order to cushion New Zealanders from the effect of what has been a fairly sharp recession, to the extent that this year we'll run a $13 billion deficit supporting government investment in infrastructure and continuity of public services. We've also implemented significant tax reform, including increasing GST and reducing taxes on savings, on incomes, on exports and investment. And I'm pleased to say those tax cuts are being very well received.
Question number 2, Craig Foss.
Mr Speaker, my question is to the Minister of Finance and reads,